For those of you who don't know me, my name is Alyssa Hamilton. I'm the program director here at Leeway. I use she, her pronouns, and I also want to provide a visual description for people on the call who may need that, particularly folks who are blind and or low vision. Essentially, I'm a fat, white, masculine of center woman with short hair. It's very high tonight, sort of in a pompadour, with gold rimmed glasses, wearing a gray t-shirt, a denim blue button up, and a red bandana tied around my neck. I'm thrilled that you all joined us for tonight's session. I'm also joined by some amazing folks. There's a colleague of mine who works at Leeway Foundation named Gabe, who's also on the call and running a lot of the tech. So Gabe, will you say hi to the good folks on the call tonight?
Yes, hi everyone. My name's Gabe. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm actually also a past grantee of this grant. So I'm really excited to be here and to talk to you all about it today.
Amazing. I'm also joined by two very talented human beings, Alyssa Al-Dookhi and Raed Fayez. And so Alyssa and Rana, will you introduce yourself, share your name, your pronoun, and your artistic practice with the folks?
Sure. I'll go first, alphabetical, right? Hey, everybody. My name is Alyssa Al-Dookhi. You can call me Dukes also. My pronouns are they or them. And if you're not sure what I look like your hot immigrant uncle ready to cause some trouble on the corner. My art practice is stand-up comedy. And as we'll see, stand-up comedy can take you all sorts of fun places, including Media Activist and Artist Residency. So thank you so much for having me. I love this.
Second that, yes, Alyssa is the hot uncle about to cause some trouble. Hi, my name is Alyssa Fayez. I'm the founder and executive director at YallaPunk. I am wearing a striped black and white shirt, and I have short curly hair. My pronouns are they, them, and I've been honored to get the chance to work with Alyssa during this residency and beyond.
Thanks, Rana. Thanks, Alyssa. I appreciate you both. We'll be definitely hearing from Alyssa and Rana at different points tonight, sort of pulling the curtain back on how they applied and received this, this residency and delivered and created this beautiful media-based work as part of it. Before we officially dive in, you can drop those questions in the chat. I also want to put this link at the forefront of our conversation. Things you should know about Leeway that I think most of the folks know on the call right now is that Leeway tries to be a gentler, kinder funder, right? We try to be a gentler, kinder foundation. And one way that we do that is by providing applicant support and as folks compile these applications. And so if you're thinking about applying for a Media Artist and Activist Residency, you don't have to go it alone. You can get some thought partnership with Leeway staff. You can do that. I've just put a link in the chat by signing up for a one-on-one support session, or you could just email us at info@leeway.org. Both Gabe and I's email is open to the public. You can find it on our website, on our staff page. And so please don't hesitate to reach out should you have a question or a nitty-gritty detail that you want some thought partnership on. So please do know that about Leeway and the work that we do here. And are there folks on the call that are not familiar with the Leeway Foundation? I want to just do like a temperature check. If you aren't familiar with who we are and what we do, just generally, just let me know verbally or in the chat. Otherwise, I'm not going to bore you with those details, and we're going to jump right into the residency. All right, we're in good company then. Well, then you know that we're about supporting women, trans, and gender nonconforming artists. That's at the heart and the core of what we do. You know that we only fund in the greater Philadelphia region, Bucks, Camden, Chester, Delaware, Montgomery, and Philadelphia counties. And you know that staff don't make grant decisions, and neither do our board. It's always a community-based peer panel making those decisions. The last thing I'll raise up is that we have applications in English and Spanish. If that's new to you, congratulations. If you know us from the old days, you know that we always operate with English and Spanish applications, both hard copies for some grant streams as well as online applications. So you know that we are about sort of the intersections between art and social change then. So Gabe, could you get us to the next slide here? You knew this about us. That's our mission. You can go to the next one. So what does Leeway mean by art for social change, right? Essentially what we need, and this is the quickest and dirtiest way to talk about it, is that it's art with a vision and an intentional analysis, right? It impacts not just individuals, but communities for change. And that sort of art has impact beyond yourself, right? So big questions to ask yourself for this residency, as well as any of Leeway's grant making, is how does the art create action and how does it engage community? Those are two big questions that run through our grant making. The list that you see on the slide is just some ways of how art for social change, what it can do. It doesn't have to do all of these things. This isn't a punch list, right? But maybe the media you're thinking about creating raises consciousness or challenges racism or transphobia, or is a tool for movement building and organizing, or shifts the perception of power, right? And so again, it doesn't have to do all of these things. It could do one or two of these things, but it is definitely creating some action. Your art is definitely creating some action and making some change in the community at large. Alyssa and Rana, is there anything you think folks should know about Leeway before we ask about your specific residency?
I think the thing that I keep thinking about as you have gone through this is that, like, when you say you're available and eager to chat with folks about their projects and their hopes and dreams, that is 100% true, and that it is a wonderful place to come and just get listened to, you know, at any stage in your process. So I would agree.
You know, we're working hybrid, we're remote, and we're also back in the office on a few days. And so if you want to meet in person, we're happy to meet in person. Come by, we'll eat some pretzels together. We'll talk about your media residency. You know, it would bring us a lot of joy if you would do that. So let's talk about this residency itself. It provides grants of $25,000 to women, trans, and/or gender nonconforming media artists working in close collaboration with social justice-based or cultural organizations to document, reframe, or amplify the issues and campaigns addressed by the organization. We could go to the next slide. It'll give you that overview. Other things you should know about their residency, it's all about showcasing the ways that artists and artistic processes can work within social justice-based organizations to achieve social change, right? Media artists and organizations apply together. This is different from most other Leeway grant applications. So the organization has a section of the application, and the media artist also has a section of the application for work that they're thinking about doing for about roughly 1 year. About in the past 2 years, this is the third year of this residency, we've awarded 5 residencies each year, which has been really exciting to watch sort of that work blossom in the world. And each residency provides $15,000 directly to the media artist and $10,000 directly to the organization. The deadline for this year's residency applications is June 26th. For those of you who are procrastinators like I am, that's 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on June 26th. Please make sure your application is in by that date. I cannot help you after that moment, but I can help you plenty before that time. So that essentially means you've got about 2 months to dream about the possibilities and talk with possible collaborators, because at the end of the day, collaboration is really a huge piece of this residency, particularly since the org and the media artist decides to work together for a year and has to even do this application together collaboratively. Alyssa and Rana, can you tell folks what you received the residency for and like what media was at the core of it?
Yeah, so we had a dream to launch a Swana queer talk show out of a traditional mejlis or diwania that you're kind of seeing in this fake background behind me, and sort of a place to come and drink tea online together at a talk show for queer, Arab, and Southwest Asian folks.
And this type of traditional seating is usually reserved for cis men, majority of the time. So it felt very important to kind of reclaim that space for queer, gender nonconforming folks like us. Yeah, we were already kind of working with Alyssa a little bit as an artist fellow before this, and that's where the idea came up. And then I saw the application for the Leeway grant came up, and I said, I think this is a perfect fit. So.
Love that. I love that you both talk about like the ability of this media residency to help make space, right? Like to create and make space where there hadn't previously been that. And so that's a really exciting part of one of the things that your residency did. Tell us a little bit about, Rana, about YallaPunk before this residency. Like, what did that organization do? Can you tell us a little bit about why it existed?
Sure, absolutely. So when I was a young immigrant kid, I used to throw a lot of punk shows. And that's kind of how I learned to do any form of community organizing, just grassroots work. And back in 2017, we all are a little aware of a political landscape of that time. Muslim ban was kind of in effect, basically, and there seemed to be a lot of really negative perceptions of Swana folks in the media. You know, the idea of seeing Swana folks coming together, flourishing, laughing, having a great time, not being portrayed as terrorists or just backwards folks, was really appealing. It started off as a music and arts festival, and evolved into an arts organization around pandemic times. The idea was to still continue doing this work in a safe manner. So the idea of a fellowship came up where we could work and develop projects from a distance safely, to dream of a future when the pandemic wouldn't have us so separated, and that we could actually come together again and experience this project together.
Thank you for that. It's like sort of that focus on like the distinct communities that you serve and this vision for community even during a pandemic, right? I think one of the beautiful happenings that occurred throughout this residency was you were envisioning it as this virtual moment, but it expanded beyond that. Can you talk a little bit about that, Alyssa? Because I heard that those live tapings were lit.
The tapings were lit. I mean, taping is always fun, and it was fun to have a bunch of people in a room reading art like for hours and hours on end all day. And we got to do that at Vox Populi, who was our fiscal sponsor, who were so fantastic, and that's such a cool space. And yeah, I mean, the initial idea was I would sit here just like I am now with a green screen, like talking to you live on Twitch. And then eventually we were like, you know, it's actually easier to pre-tape everything, but if you pre-tape, then you get a set and then you get a studio. And we ended up having this production that was originally going to be me in this guest room that I'm in right now. And it turned into this wonderful project, mostly because I was expecting to do this without support, without leeway, and without grants and funding. And so it was a really spectacular way for it to be like, oh yeah, we can deliver the product we actually want to give, to bring people together.
Love that. you illustrate like one possibility of this residency, which is that you write an application for work that you envision will happen, and we know that it's likely to change, right? But how do you write an application that allows this community peer panel to picture what's possible, even right now, even though they know that will likely change? We know the core will stay the same, even though maybe the modalities, in your case, like virtual and live, shifted at points. So next slide, Gabe. Thank you. The residency asks for something that we call a social change intent or a vision. So we ask applicants to this residency to identify at least one, but no more than three, social change categories that essentially best describe the core behind your residency of the intent or the vision. There's no incorrect or correct way to choose. You just pick one that resonates with the core of the work that you're planning to do through your residency. On your screen, you'll see sort of the buckets of how we think about movements for social change and the intents and the vision that you might have. And really think about, because there's going to be a question in the application that directly asks about what you selected here. So if you select racial justice and you get to the application and you're the artist, question number 3 is going to literally ask, what did you select as your social change intent, and how does your residency create some change around that issue area, right? Alyssa, what were your social change intents as you envisioned this sort of SWANA live taping and late night talk show?
Yeah, so I picked immigrant justice and LGBTQIA social movements, and trans. I think if I picked a third one, it was transgender justice. But the real answer is like they're all one thing. You know what I mean? Like if you are doing one thing, the intersectionality means that everything comes up. So you know, this answer should come easy to anybody. And it was so interesting you brought up the pandemic and doing this virtual world. And you know, as a queer person who grew up in Kuwait, you know, my queer experience was on the internet. And so kind of reliving this in my new home as an immigrant, doing this hibernation again with my friends on the internet, where I'm allowed to discover myself. And you may have noticed how drastically my haircut's changed since my last headshot. You know what I mean? That's thanks to all the little gay people on the internet who helped me become this person. Forever and ever and ever. And so it's all very much tied up for me. And, you know, and especially as an Arab American, bisexual, non-binary person, like I don't really get to tick a box. So, providing a buffet of options for my viewers as well.
Yeah.
Was a no-brainer.
Thank you for that. And thank you for like radical candor and like defining who you are, you know. Bless the gay people on the internet. They have helped so many of us is my one response to what you were saying. And then my secondary response is like, you illuminate this part of like, you know, how these social change intents were all threaded together for you, right? That you can't have LGBT justice without trans justice, that you can't have immigrant justice without trans justice, right? That they're all intersectional. And so you illuminate this part of this application, which is Leeway's not going to define these social change intents for you. You have the space to define what they mean for you, what disability justice or economic justice actually means to you and the work that you're cutting out to do. We're not going to define that. That's all on you as the people behind this actual work.
And to highlight what you just said, like Leeway's going to believe you when you say who you are. So go ahead and say it.
Truly. We don't expect you to be anybody who you are. You know, you don't need to show up in this application with a certain amount of grant speak, as I might say, behind you. I know that other funders might ask you to use academic language or use the buzzwords for philanthropy, right? You get to approach this residency as if you were talking to a friend across the table, right? There are definitely questions that we're asking you to answer. Please answer the questions. That's real, right? But how would you answer them if we were just chatting over a cup of tea, right? Remember, the panel it's a peer panel. They're community members, they're artists, they're cultural producers, they work in social justice orgs. They're from the same communities as you. So talk to them and keep it real. Next slide, please. Collaboration. Oh, it's so important for this residency. I mean, it is literally core to this residency. It's the idea behind the residency that we were dreaming about, like, social justice orgs do so much good in the world. They're amazing. And sometimes they could use some additional capacity from folks to amplify their mission or document it or make it more accessible through art. That's the power of art, right? And so that was really the impetus of this collaboration. You know, you can see more about this on our guidelines, and I'll throw that link in the chat in just a minute, but it needs to be deep and sincere, and you get to define that, but you should definitely have a shared vision, mission, and respect for one another as collaborators, as the media artist and the organization. Also, the media artist should function primarily as an artist and a strategist, not just an independent contractor who you say, yeah, come in and tape these 3 things for us. We need it back in XYZ week. We want you to think about the media artist as someone who sits at the table with you as an organizer, someone who is a thought partner in this work, not just somebody that you hire real quick to make a little film and then, you know, they're on with their life and you're on with yours at the organization. Again, both the artist and the org fill out respective sections of this application. And so it's going to be felt by the panel if you haven't talked to one another or if you're not in it for the same reasons, right? And so really keep in mind that you should definitely talk to each other before you start this collaboration. Rana and Alyssa, I know that you were working together a little bit and this residency got on your radar, but how did you start to prepare this application? What kind of conversations did you have? What did that look like?
So the conversation started with kind of building a shared vision. And I wanted to actually say that I really appreciate Alyssa working with YallaPunk on this, especially during a time of transitional change. We just got our own 501c3 in the past 12 months. So this was during a transitional time. And I know, yeah, there was a little bit of ambiguity. So we were really sitting down and trying to like iron out as much ambiguity as possible. And I think it was very important for us to have kind of the same vision and the same outlook on how we wanted to see this project grow. But again, Alyssa is the artist and it should be artist, the vision should be artist driven. YallaPunk was very happy to support that vision.
And the wonderful thing about working with Rana is I was just merely an artist before I met Rana. And Rana was the first person who was like, that's plenty. Like, you doing art is enough. And I was always really scared of becoming an activist until I met Rana. And so that's the kind of relationship that really works here. You know, it's always been Rana supporting me using my art in a freeing way that allowed me to then take it to this place where I can create stuff like that. And so YallaPunk has been an integral part of my art this entire time. And so again, an absolute no-brainer that we would be doing this together and that I would want to highlight YallaPunk's work in this, you know, big, you know, 8-episode long promotional sharing space as well, you know.
Love that. So y'all had love for each other before this residency.
It's safe to say that, yeah, I would
right?
say so.
That's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing love at the end of the day, right? But y'all had a relationship before the residency. For folks on the call who are thinking about this, right? You can have a pre-existing relationship with an organization like Alyssa had with YallaPunk, right? But even if you don't have a pre-existing relationship with an organization, it's really important that you think about that shared vision, right? And think about how you're going to collaborate. because this residency is over the course of a year, right? You want to make sure that you like know each other a little bit before you dig in together, or at least you have things defined if you're new to each other about how that working relationship might flow and ebb throughout. You know, if you receive this residency, we ask you to put together something that we call the MOU, or the Memorandum of Understanding, that literally details like how y'all work together. You know, if conflict arises, how will you navigate the conflict? How will invoices be taken care of, right? Like the nitty gritty. That's not something you need to do for this application, but if you receive it, we will ask, just so that everyone's on the same page and feeling good about the next year of work and what that might look like. I want to tell you about the artist application first, if we can go to the next slide. The artist eligibility. If you are the media artist and you're thinking about applying, you need to be a media artist. I know that sounds very basic, but it's not just, I am a dancer and I would like some documentation that is taped, right? This is really at the core of this residency. I have a media arts-based project that is going to amplify or reframe or document the work of the social justice org that I'm working with. And so we define media arts really expansively, right? It's including but not limited to film and video, and that's narrative, documentary, experimental, live TV even. It's audio, it's podcast, it can be installation and projection work. It could be animation, digital art, games or gaming. It could be web-based content. It could be multimedia or new media works, or multidisciplinary works, or something we haven't envisioned yet that includes a hybrid of these modalities just mentioned. And so it's not just for film. It certainly can be film, but don't pigeonhole it as just film. Think about media in its most expansive sense. You need to live in one of our funding counties, which you'll see on the slide. Have to be 18, identify as a woman, trans, or gender nonconforming person, and you have to be working collaboratively with a social justice or cultural org. You can't apply if you don't have a collaborating org, if you are on the staff or the board of the collaborating organization. So you cannot be on the staff or the board. If you're a full-time student in an arts degree granting program, you can likely harness some dollars from your institution that you're a part of there. You can't have received a 2022 Transformation Award, which is amazing if you got a 2022 Transformation Award. Just take a break for 1 year, just pause. Leeway has limited funding, and so we want to try and spread it as far as we can. You can apply for a 23 Transformation Award, and then if you're a previous awardee from Leeway, just make sure all your reports are in before you apply. The artist completes an application that's separate from the organization. I'm going to link that artist application in the chat right now. And if we'll go to the next slide, I'll tell you a little bit about what it looks like. Before I do that, Alyssa, now that the coffee mug is up to your actual lip and you just took a sip, I'm going to actually ask you a question. Are you ready?
I'm ready. I'm caffeinated.
Like, what inspired you to apply? Like, you were like, I want to do this residency application. I want to answer all these questions. I want to upload work samples. Like, what was the impetus to apply?
Rana.
just Rana.
Rana. You know, comedians are used to getting paid $10 in drink tickets to do literally anything. So I was really coming from a place of, I am just gonna have to figure this out on my own. And Rana's like, that's very punk of you, but we can get help. And so, you know, the inspiration was, you know, I really believe in this thing, and I have all these wonderful people around me who can help, and we can get this done. Everybody seems to like what's happening, so let's keep it going.
Also, you're a very funny person, and I wanted that comedy immortalized in taped media.
That's right. Rana had an idea for an archive, okay? An archive of Alyssa's work.
Legends of the Hidden Dukes.
But I also think part of your application that hit well with our panel was like the joy and the comedy behind it, right? So it's like taking this serious issue, right? You were talking earlier about creating a space that's traditionally for cis men, right? And making it your own, but doing it in such a way and taking that very serious issue you're thinking about, and doing it in a way that makes people laugh and centers joy in the process. I think for the panelists who are reviewing your application, especially since you had work samples and they got to see you, Alyssa, and in your comedy gloriousness, right? It was easy for them to invest in joy in comedy, right? In a world where we don't have enough of that. And so just one quick thing about your application, that's definitely worth letting folks know.
Yeah, and it does feel hard to be like, is this joyful? I totally
Yeah.
get that. I also work in abortion access, so I totally get that. So, but yeah, there is joy in it. Have the joy, have that fun. We're blowing bubbles in this Diwani app. Okay, we're having good
Oh my goodness. So let's peel the curtain back and tell you what the artist application looks like. Basic artist information, your name, your email, the run of the mill there. It's going to ask for what we call an experience page. We do not ask for an artist resume or a CV in our applications. We ask you essentially to share 4 to 10 personal, professional, and/or political experiences that led you to where you are in your artistic practice today. I would say, in terms of advice, don't just recreate your artist resume or CV here. We intentionally don't ask for those things. And so, of course, give us those exhibitions or those things that you organized or your artistic accolades, right? But what are the personal things that have led you here too? What are the political things that have led you here? Essentially, Leeway is looking for things that over the course of your life have shaped you into the artist you are today and the experiences that have led you here literally to this residency application. Alyssa, how did you tackle the experience page? Like, what did you forefront? How did you decide what to include?
Yeah. I like this question a lot because this is sneakily like not confusing, but like part that you really want to get right. And it's kind of like I always think of it like, how in Slumdog Millionaire, it makes sense that he knows all the answers by the end. This is kind of how you should approach this, right? It's like, so today I am making a Swana LGBTQ talk show. What do I have to do those things? I have to be able to write a script. I got to be funny. I gotta have done some activism work, and I gotta know how to put stuff on television. So I was like, okay, let's talk about my years as a stand-up comedian. All right, we can talk about how stand-up comedy affected my journey and what kind of things I am able to create there. Next, I started working with YallaPunk. There we go, another part of the puzzle. Another part of the puzzle is when I was writing scripts, and another part of the puzzle is when I was creating content. And so, like, what is the like transformer of your abilities that creates this new project that led you there?
A really brilliant way to think about it, and to think about like, what are the ingredients in the whole recipe of my resume that they're going to need to know are in the pot cooking, right? And you did a really skillful job illustrating that you had the experience there, right? And so, no, you may not have made an 8-episode live TV show yet, right? But you had these other ingredients that allowed the panel to take that risk and say yes, like, okay, yeah, let's do this, right? This person has the experience and the chops to make this work happen. You did a really good job on your experience page of really articulating that for the panel so that they could understand it. The other thing in the application that you'll see are 6 questions about the residency, right? And essentially they're going to, there are 6 for the artist to think about. It's going to ask how, what media arts you're using to document, reframe, or amplify the issue of the organization you're working with, and essentially how that residency showcases how artists contribute to social justice movements, right? We know this. Artists are conduits for change, right? Help the panel understand how you working in collaboration with this org will push your social change intention forward. It's going to ask why the residency is important and urgent to you. This is probably the easiest question for you to answer because you know why you're doing this work at the end of the day and why it has to happen right now in 2023. It'll ask about the goals and intended impact of your residency. Here's that question that is essentially asking how does the media create action? It'll ask about your collaboration with your social justice org and how it's deep, sincere, and mutually beneficial. We'll ask about the communities you'll work with as part of this residency and how your own identities, whatever they may be, race, class, neighborhood, age, and the list can go on there, about how those identities might play a role in that work with the communities that you're looking to engage and involve. And then we'll ask how the media created as part of this residency will involve or engage the community, right? Those two questions from earlier that I said are really important. How's the art create action, and how does it engage and involve the community? Here they are again, directly in these questions. And then I'll ask for 2 work samples. Alyssa, how did you pick work samples? You have a bevy, I'm sure. And so how did you figure out what two from your bevy of work samples you would use?
Okay, you're actually gonna laugh because I had not been diligent about collecting work samples. I mean, and I also panicked about this part. I was like, oh my gosh, especially I'm just a silly artist guy, is how I was feeling. And so now I have to provide this concrete stuff. So, I wish I had recorded more
Mm.
is one thing. So I had a tape of my stand up because I am good about taping that. And then I also, the other sample I used was we put on a benefit show, a stand-up comedy benefit show for YallaPunk. And so finding a piece of work that does it all is a great way to show that. And so I created a sort of guide to putting together a comedy benefit show for YallaPunk, and also showing the results of that and what we were able to accomplish with that thing as well. Like, not only this is what I did and how I did it, but this was the impact.
I think it was a really smart way to address it, right? We got this sort of document highlighting, Hungry for Laughs, the fundraiser that you had organized, which showcased how you could bring and curate all the things necessary for a live event, which was very important to your residency idea. And then we also had a video of your stand-up, right? And so, which allowed the panel to be convinced that you could hold your own on the stage, essentially, and you could host this live TV show that you were actually pitching to them in this grant proposal. And so it's wild to me to think that question for work samples made you panic, because you gave us 2 really good ones. So, you were sweating, but we didn't notice that you were sweating.
And that is the lesson here.
Next slide, Gabe, for us, please. All right, organizational eligibility. This is where YallaPunk comes in as the org. Basic org eligibility for the Media Artist and Activist Residency. You have to be a social justice or cultural organization with a 501c3 status and or a fiscal sponsor, right? And so let's talk about this slash of social justice / cultural org. And what we mean by that. Social justice orgs are pretty clear. We know these as organizations that are grassroots organizers and protesters on the ground, right? Organizations, I'll name a couple that are working actively in Philly. Organizations like the Philadelphia Community Bail Fund, Asian Americans United, literally fighting for the No Arena in Chinatown campaign. Please go and support that campaign. That's me as Melissa beating that drum, but please, it's a really important fight that we're having in Philadelphia right now. Organizations like Juntos or Philly Thrive from an environmental justice lens, Project Safe or Why Not Prosper, thinking about women in reentry. And that's just to name a few. Cultural organizations sometimes are less clear when thinking about this residency. And so for this residency, we define sort of a cultural organization as an org that has a social justice intention as a clear core component of their mission and works with communities that are often ignored, silenced, and or marginalized because of who they are. YallaPunk is a cultural organization, right? As we would define it, but falls under this umbrella for this residency because their core mission is about redefining narratives around Swana communities, right? And so I just wanted to pull back the curtain a little bit about what cultural organizations might qualify. We had another artist in residency who received this residency, Malkia Ochech, who was working with the Paul Robeson House, a cultural organization. But anyone who knows Robeson House knows that they are about Black liberation at the end of the day. And so we know that there are cultural orgs who have social justice intents, but really think about that as you're applying if you're from the organizational end of it. So I just wanted to pull that out. You've got to be located in our funding area too, as the org. You have to have an operating budget less than $1.5 million. And you need to be collaborating with a media artist at the end of the day. Organizations complete their own collaborating organization form just through that link in the chat for folks. And essentially it looks similar, but not identical to the artist application. So if you go to the next slide, I'll tell you what's part of that. Basic org information, who you are, what the mission is, 5 questions about your role as the organization in the residency, who the org is, the mission, the communities that the organization serves. We're going to ask about your relationship to the media artist and why you think they're well suited for the collaboration. Why does the org want to work with this media artist, right? Third question will be about how the artist will be included in the organization's work. Earlier, we talked about the media artist not just being like hired as an independent contractor, right? So how will the artist be included in sort of the strategy that this social justice org has or takes? How the collaboration with the media artist is deep, sincere, and mutually beneficial. There's that question exists on the artist application and the organizational application. And so for a reason, not to be repetitive, but to hear it from both sides of that collaboration and coin. And then the last question is what the org hopes to get out of the residency and what impact it might have if they could have the additional capacity of a media artist to work with them. And then we'll ask for some, dry and sandpapery things from a 501c3 or fiscally sponsored project, your IRS determination letter, your current year operating budget, and a list of current board and or staff. Rana, how did you start to work on this application with with Alyssa? How did you submit your respective parts of the app? Did you read and review each other's applications before you submit it? Like, what did that look like?
Yeah, so as always, it's really great to catch up with Alyssa. Catch up on the gay agenda, but also look at grants. As always, with every single application I fill out, I like to start a shared Google Doc. This is not a plug for Google. It's a plug for any sharing software. I like to copy and paste all the questions because you never know, the internet might cut out and you might lose all your work. I learned that the hard way, actually, with another application. And just getting on a call and putting down skeleton ideas. It's really hard to get started writing a whole essay or a whole paragraph. So just do an idea dump, of every single shared understanding that you have, and then sift through it. So basically we were kind of interviewing each other in a way, because it's really hard to talk about yourself and the work that you do. But if you ask the other person questions and you write those answers down, then I think we did it in what, Alyssa, was it a couple of hours by the time we were really done?
Yeah, especially, once you develop a relationship with your artist or your organization, whichever way you're going, it's like, oh yeah, I do that. Like they'll reflect back at you the things that you can't see, and you're like, oh right, I am. But you get to brag about yourself.
You start sharing your brain a little bit, and that was really nice.
Right. Thank you so much for that. Even the advice of just dump it in the Google Doc, right? It's a good place to start. We gave an info session on Tuesday, and one of those artists was like, I just start with a shitty first draft, essentially, right? Just to get everything out to find the gems in the rubble. And so it's a really good starting place. the last question I have for the two of you is, tell me a little bit, you received this residency in 2021. Well, you applied in 2021. You did the work in 2022, right? Tell me a little bit about what it felt like to receive it and how this residency may have impacted your work, if at all. It also may have been a pain in the butt. I don't know, right? But I want to ask the question.
It was very validating,
Very,
honestly. Yeah.
Mm.
So, yeah, it's a space in media that sorely needs representation from people like us. And even though I think Arab American media is now starting to expand, there aren't really any shows for trans folks, non-binary folks, or gender non-conforming folks at all that I can think of in the SWANA space. So I honestly, Alyssa is doing something that I've never seen before. And that was one of the most important things in making sure that we do continue this work.
yeah, second that. And from the artist perspective, for the artists on here, like, this is the chance for me to be like, oh, I can just make this thing and know that it is getting made, that there is a budget. I have people who understand math to help me. If you're not, listen, I'm the talent. Okay, let's just be real here. So you have that support. You've got the financial support as well to just do the thing and do it the way you want to do it. They wouldn't be able to before, and it lets you do more than you thought you were able to.
Alyssa, I'm going to ask you a nitty-gritty question. Were
Mhm.
you able to hire the folks that you needed to help make this work a reality?
Yeah, and that honestly was a huge part of the mission, was telling people, I want to pay you to do that thing that you love to do for the people you love to do it for. And especially with the writers room, of course, that was dear to my heart. But the writers would ask me in the script writing sessions, like, is this in the voice of the show? And I got to say, you are the voice of the show,
Hmm.
over and over and over again. And then they got to get paid for that feeling as well, which I imagine felt fabulous for that. Just
Beautiful. Love to hear that. It also showcases that, look, if you are the creative, the idea behind the residency can be your creative vision and intellectual property, right? But we know that media doesn't happen in a vacuum with just one person, that oftentimes it takes a full team of folks to make it happen. There's a reason why this residency clocks in at $25,000, because we know that you need to pay other folks and teams, yourselves, to make it happen. Even the equipment to make it happen is its own thing. In your case, there was a whole set to be designed, right? And
yeah,
so that takes some coin to make it happen.
yeah.
And it takes some people in your community and beyond to also make it happen. And so please don't think about this as I have to do all the things and I can't possibly do that. You can apply for this residency and compile your team later, as long as it's your creative vision and intellectual property. So there's that. Last slide, please, Gabe. We're here to help. Look at this fancy QR code. This is all Gabe's technology. You could scan that bad boy. It's going to take you right to an Eventbrite page where you can sign up for sort of one-on-one applicant support. We can meet for 5 minutes or 45 minutes. We've got these upcoming dates in June before the June 26th deadline, where you can come and sit down with us. We'll actually be physically at Las Parsalas Garden in Norris Square. If you've never been there, it is a dream space, gorgeous. We were there yesterday and it was just everything I needed it to be on a spring day. Or you can also join us virtually for a one-on-one support session at a time that works for you. So really, truly don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're really here to help. We've got about 5 minutes left and I do want to open it up for any questions that folks may have on the call. Anything that Rana, Alyssa, I, or Gabe can support you with. We can also give haircut suggestions, books that you might want to read.
So Debbie, I have a question.
Go for it,
So,
Debbie.
yeah. So at the end of, like, is there a time period of, I know it's almost a year. Did you, Alyssa and Rana, like, did you once you got granted the award, were you given like a time frame of when you had to have your actual residency done?
Great question, Debbie.
I can answer that for you if you want. Oh, it's a great question. So these residencies are selected. So in Alyssa and Rana's year, they were selected in 2021 for that 2021. They were working together all throughout 2022. And for that year, their report was due May 15th, which is coming up, you know? So they worked for over a year, right? And so if you're looking at this cycle coming up, you'd apply this year. You can work together for a year, a little less, a little more, depending on what you do. But the grant report will be due March 15th of 2025, to give you an idea. So I know that feels like a long time away, but we know that some of this work, especially if it's responsive social justice campaigning and organizing, that it takes time to develop this work, not just from a media standpoint of editing and things like that, but from a standpoint of some of the battles we fight are long term. And so, and they reoccur. I know we talked about the No Arena in Chinatown. This is like, they're fighting the same battle they fought in 2000 in 2023 again, right? And so you've definitely got some time there, Debbie.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Anything else we can help anyone with?
Let me see. Another question. Let me find something.
All right. Rana, Alyssa, my gosh, I am so thankful for you. Really, really appreciate all the brilliance and insight you provided everyone with tonight. Can we find you anywhere on the internet or beyond? And can we watch the show, or when can we watch the show? So tell us a little bit.
Yeah, I'm available on the internet. I think I even have a background with my handle, so I don't have to spell it. There it is. Zoom comedy really had me getting innovative here. I'm the Dukeness anywhere you can find people on the internet. The show, you know, showbiz, baby. But we're hoping for June. We're gonna make June happen. We're gonna drop this show off for
That's
you.
right. I heard you talking about Pride Month. Pride Month, inshallah. There's your Arabic word of the day, inshallah. And you can follow the show. I'm dropping that in the chat. It's called Sabah al-Khara, which is a play on the word for good morning. It means shitty morning. So always with the comedy. Thank you. And Rana, you just dropped YallaPunk on IG. Thank you both so much. For folks who are still in the call, thank you so much for joining us. Feel free to email us. Anything you need, we're here to support. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday evening, people. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having this session, Melissa. And thank you guys for sharing, Rana and Alyssa. We really appreciate all of your input. It was very, very helpful.
Oh, thank you so much for coming. Appreciate you.
Yes. All right.
All right. Bye, y'all. Take care.
Good to see you all.